Hey everyone, Tony and John welcoming you back to King's Talk presented by Cap City Crown. It's been about a month since we've done one of these episodes. You know, mid August to mid September was kind of a slow time for Kings news, but with training camp a week away and just like it's just kind of starting to feel like basketball season again. It's you live in the Sacramento area. It's been raining the last couple of days. Football season started, which always kind of feels like a precursor for basketball season. So we're back. Thanks for joining us. And John, what's up? What's going on?
Oh man, if I wasn't excited already, that lead up that was pretty exhilarating. This is probably the best time of the year, I think, in the sports world. Um, and if you also if you like autumn, if you like autumn colors, it's a perfect time of year. So definitely got a little pep in my step these days. And there's plenty to talk about with the Kings. I mean, I think you're right for the last month. I don't know if we found it 100% worth it to wring out every little detail. So, come back refreshed, ready to talk about the season and ready to dive into things. There's a lot to talk about. Training camp starts Tuesday, the 27th. So, that is right around the corner there.
Week away.
Yeah. And you're right. And, you know, uh, there's plenty at the top of the roster to talk about, plenty at the bottom of the roster to talk about. We know the 20 guys that'll be at a training camp, and you could almost say something or have a storyline or something to focus on for each person or sets of players, maybe. Because, I think for the first time in a long time, this is a Kings team going into camp. And this says nothing about what they're going to be able to do this season, but just matter of fact that this team is better. It has a better distribution of talent. It's more well-rounded. It definitely has more depth than in recent years. And it feels completely different. And a lot of that is predicated off the fact that Monte McNair made his swing for the fences last February and made some moves this offseason. And I don't know. I mean, there's reasons to be excited just by the start of sports, but for this particular season for Kings fans or for anybody that has an eye on the Sacramento Kings, it's particularly exciting. But, I don't know if you wanted to start anywhere on that kind of roster situation going into camp, but, it feels kind of silly, kind of calling these roster battles. But one of the ones that maybe is the, closest to actually being fairly designated as that is the competition, if you will, for the third point guard role between Matthew Dellavedova and Quinn Cook. I don't know if you want to talk about the importance of that or who you think has the edge or what you're looking forward to seeing from these guys in camp. This is kind of free flowing. Camp hasn't started yet, so we're still kind of floating, not attached to the ground.
No, I think I did even before we get into the battles, the position battles like the third point guard or the battle between Moneke, Okpala, and Merrill. I think, you were kind of mentioning this roster, how it's looked as good as it has in a long time. I think just having these battles for that third point guard and that 15th roster spot, I think that's very telling of, what this team is and the talent they have on their team. I feel like the last couple of years, during this playoff drought, there are no roster battles for that third point guard spot. You just sign a guy that would want to come to the Kings or, that's available or, you don't really have to worry for that 15th spot. You just have to find someone and fill it in. And I don't know. I think that's a good sign that there are battles. Kings really aren't used to any kind of battles for a roster spot. So
it's an excellent point.
Yeah, so I think that's encouraging to look forward to, or it's just encouraging. And
their roster battles, like kind of you're alluding to, that are kind of bottom into the roster. Like there's a lot of things that you can feel very sure about. I mean, like we'll talk about it later, but it's like shuffling out how minutes get distributed between the three very talented shooting guards they have on this team, that's interesting. That could almost be considered a battle in some way. But like in terms of like guys battling for a spot on the roster, it's all at the bottom of it, and you're just kind of filling it out. You're really getting down to good detail here. And like you said, you're not just carrying over a bunch of guys from your summer league team or whatever's happening, or counting on a bunch of guys that have had careers in the G League or at the end of benches. I don't know. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think that is an illustration of itself. And man, like you could be blind. You could feel it, man. It just feels different, completely. But kind of on to that, if you wanted to transition into that Quinn Cook, Matthew Dellavedova, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that or the third point guard role in general?
Well, the third point guard role in general, it's not the most important role. Obviously, it's a third point guard, but Fox, he's dealt with injuries the last couple of years. He's been in the league. Mitchell was, I want to say, relatively healthy his rookie season. I think he missed a little time, but of course, if you need, Mitchell or Fox go down, you need to rely on this guy to, play that backup point guard for however long that person's out. So, it's kind of nice. Cook or Dellavedova, I don't think you can go wrong with either. Cook a little shorter than Dellavedova. I think he's the better shooter. A little younger too. So that's good. He's a couple-time NBA champ as well. And then you have Dellavedova, who's a little older. Can he make it back in the NBA? He hasn't been in the NBA for several years now. He's been in Australia, so it's kind of just like, could he make it if he's back in the league? I bet he could. He's the better defender, a little taller, like I was saying. So that's good matchup wise, and he seems to be shooting the three ball well in Australia, so that's an encouraging sign. It's not NBA, and Quinn Cook does have more recent NBA experience than Dellavedova, and has proven to shoot that three ball pretty well. So, at the end of the day, I don't think it matters too much who you go with. I think if you're looking on defense, you go with Dellavedova. And, he has that Mike Brown connection. He kind of has that, dog in him, if you will. Good locker room guy, good guy who, just a hustler, a grinder. And so, the Kings are trying to build a culture, and Dellavedova definitely encompasses that culture in him. So, and I'm a big Delly fan. Not a big Delly fan, but, the 2015 finals, was it?
Mm-hmm. It's the one. Wait, the one where there's the first one where the Warriors and Kings, or not Kings, Warriors and Cavs played, where the Cavs lost. But he in game was it 2 and 3 or 1 and 2, just like harassed, completely Steph Curry, and it affected him. It's not like Steph Curry got like shut down, but he affected him. He was not efficient from the 3-point line or really anywhere. I don't think in that game.
Yeah, and
people didn't want to give really credit. I remember, he from exhaustion and cramps and stuff.
It's crazy.
And it is. That guy literally put himself in a hospital bed because he worked so hard.
Yeah.
It was like, it was one of those things where it's like, if you were rooting for the Warriors or a fan of the Warriors, you hated that guy. It's just like, that is always a sign that that's a good player.
Yeah.
Generally. But I think what you're kind of saying there is like, there's not a lot that different. There are some things that differentiate between these two players, but not a ton. Like either one would be a good pick, is what you're saying. And I think you're 100% right. Cook's 29, Dellavedova's 32. Cook, the 3-point shooting. One of the things that James Ham said was that he, for Quinn Cook this offseason, his main focus is working on his 3-point shooting. So as long as that pays off, I think that probably gives him the edge. But at the end of the day, albeit he's not super long, Dellavedova is a little taller than him and is a little more defensively versatile in that sense. But, as much of a dog and a tenacious guy as Dellavedova is, Quinn Cook is as well. And, you know, it'd be interesting to see. It'd just be nice. I think in this sense, especially for the role that they're playing for, it'd be nice to see. It'd be interesting and just kind of pleasant to sit back and watch um, them duke it out, for lack of a better way of putting that. But, you know, I think Quinn Cook has a few edges there. And I think also Ham also said that, or alluded to the fact that Quinn Cook has, I think, a better injury history. So
Mm.
if you're talking about a situation where you need somebody that you can depend on to fill in, if Fox misses a week or two or three, or Wems if Mitchell gets hurt or something, you need a guy to step up. You don't want them to get hurt. You don't want them to be prone to injury, and definitely the age factor factors into that as well. At 29 versus, I mean, Dellavedova just turned 32. To be fair to Cook, he'll be 30 in March, but he's 29 right now for the bulk of the season. So I think that's a big difference.
Yeah,
But
and
it's interesting.
I think to add on to Cook, and I mentioned that Dellavedova has that. I think I mentioned it that Dellavedova, played under Mike Brown when Mike Brown came back for a second stint in Cleveland. But Cook, Cook he was on the not the Kings, but the Stockton Kings last year. So he's familiar with the organization. He's been here. I mean, you could almost say he put in his time to earn this spot. So
Yeah, he might
um,
have a better relationship with players in general. I know that
yeah,
both the guys, because they were working out for the Kings in Vegas reportedly, both the guys showed up to summer league games and sat with Kings players. Um, I don't know. The only way I saw Dellavedova sitting with players was, I think, was through a picture, because I think I watched all those summer league games, and if I remember correctly, I think I only caught Dellavedova sitting with the players in a picture. But Quinn Cook was in a footage, and I can't speak for how chummy Dellavedova was with the rest of the guys, but on that front, Cook seemed very comfortable with the guys he was sitting with. I can't remember exactly who it was, but you know,
I know which picture you're referencing. I don't
yeah,
remember
because
exactly who it was either.
But the Dellavedova picture, a picture, it's not, a picture at an event like that, it doesn't tell anywhere near where you need to know. But it just Dellavedova's just kind of sitting there, kind of, I don't know.
I mean, it's good that they showed up. I mean, at least,
Absolutely, and they're hanging out with
yeah,
the guys. I mean, they definitely that's what we're one of the things here. It's just like both these guys are very viable candidates. It'd be interesting. Um, but yeah, uh, Cook probably has the edge in that regard and all those
hmm
kind of factors. But I guess the other kind of people that are duking it out for a spot, because when you funnel it down, what the Kings have 13 guaranteed, or they have 12 guaranteed contracts. Kent Bazemore should be the 13th. You'll
hmm
have the 14th be the third point guard, whoever it is. And so that leaves one more spot on the roster, albeit, again, it's an inactive spot. But you essentially have, because I think with the two-way guys, Neemish Takeda and Keon Ellis, you sign guys to two-way deals so they can play in the G League, and nobody can poach them. And you can pull them up whenever you need to at any time. So those guys aren't probably not going to be taking that spot, especially in an active spot. So it's really between Chima Moneke, KZ Okpala, and Sam Merrill. And each of them are interesting, and they all kind of bring with them kind of their own sort of advantages and maybe disadvantages as well. Um, and, just kind of like macro view, we can get into the specifics in a second. It's like you have Chima Moneke, who's never played in the NBA. Kind of a wild card, I think was the word you'd used to describe him. And, has a chance to be kind of an energy guy. You have KZ Okpala, who's a freak athlete, great defender. If he could just put together some shooting, he would be the complete package. And then you have Sam Merrill, the sharp shooting 6'4" shooting guard, that is a subpar defender. We kind of know what you're going to get from him, but he's really an excellent and proven 3-point shooter. So he might have probably the edge, but just broad view characterizations, that's kind of the layout there. But we can go through one of these guys, but I don't know if is there a particular guy that you're kind of not necessarily betting on, but maybe one that you think has the best upside, or someone that you're kind of rooting for, or anything like that out of those three?
I mean, if you guys have been following up with the articles that John writes, he wrote a really good one yesterday morning on KZ Okpala and just his insane defensive upside. Dude, it seems like he can almost guard all five positions. He's listed at 6'8", 6'9". What's he listed at? 6'9",
He's listed as 6'8", but
6'8". But when he's standing next to Durant, he's
yeah,
he's about Durant's size, and Durant's. I mean, Durant forever was listed at 6'9", but then he would stand next to DeMarcus Cousins, and he was taller than Cousins, and Cousins was listed at 6'11". It's always so weird. The heights. I feel like the heights in the NBA are just
very
all fudged
deceiving.
anyway. But
Yeah.
He's a tall guy. He can guard on the perimeter.
7'2" wingspan.
Yeah,
Just throwing that
7'2"
up.
wingspan. Yeah, no, that's crazy. And guard on the perimeter. He can deny shots inside. He can do it all really on defense. And I mean, the Kings need defense, right? That's one thing they've needed forever. And yeah, maybe this guy won't play the most, but who knows? Maybe I don't know. He just seems like a good guy to have in your back pocket. Davion Mitchell, is already that good defensive guy. Maybe Okpala can find some minutes here and there with injuries, and you just throw him on the best guy and just let him lock him down. But then, of course, it's the his offensive side that has some questions. He's athletic, so he can go up for oops and get to the basket on some cuts. But his shooting, I think he's shooting around 27% from three in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
I think last year he shot around 36, which is encouraging. But again, these are all for his offense, very small sample size. And if he really wants to find a place on this team, I mean, if he really wants to secure a spot on this team, I should say, if he can demonstrate a very efficient 3-point shot during training camp, I think it's his to lose. But
Mm-hmm.
only in that case. I think his defense is just that good.
Yeah, I think we might have alluded to this. He has the biggest upside just for the freak athleticism. And like you're saying, if you could just get that shooting, if you could just shoot 35%, somewhere around there, just be effective on a wide open attempt, keep defenses honest, then he can be a factor out there. He does other things that can make a huge difference. As you're saying, he's a great defender, does guard all five positions. He kind of has like in like highlights you can see from like his limited moments playing in Miami. You can see he can kind of be like a roving rim protector. He's not like an imposing big guy, but he can come up behind you. He can move quickly and fluidly, much in the way that kind of Damian Jones was a rim protector for this team. He just moves well, and he's smart and instinctual. And I think with Okpala, especially, he's just extremely gifted at being able to spring into action so swiftly. And at the same time, he has battled with guys like Vucevic in Chicago, and kind of he's not like barreling them back or anything or pancaking anybody, but he's hanging with them, and I think he has so much upside on that end, obviously. And then even on offense outside the perimeter, he has some ability, as a long, springy guy to be effective in the pick and roll game as a roll man. He has pretty decent touch, it seems like, from around the rim. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes it's kind of awkward. So it's not perfect. He'll need to perfect that and really prove that he can be effective in that role. Of course, it's like he has a huge uphill battle for that to be even like a primary option for the offense or anything like that. But there's something to work with there. And then even on the 3-point shooting front, what he'd need to do is do catch and shoot attempts. He'd be in a free flowing passing offense where you have penetration from Fox and Sabonis running things from the high post or even the low post. He might end up with a lot of open looks in the corner or on the wing or from the top, and he needs to hit those. And it seems like, I think he is shooting he's shooting under 30% in the NBA. I know that, or around there. And from three. And if of the ones that he is hitting, he's already hitting those types of ones. So he has a comfort level with what he needs to do. And speaking of comfort level, I would say the one added element that's really interesting about Okpala is that, he got drafted 2 years ago, and in 2019, I think,
Yeah,
or
I think it
and
was
so
19. Yeah.
it was right before the pandemic hit. And so that year, he got traded like a little bit after the draft. It wasn't directly after the draft, but it was after a certain threshold where he couldn't participate in summer league for the team he got traded to, which I think was Miami. And then the next year, with the pandemic having happened, there was no summer league. And then this past summer, which is his last eligible year, I believe, to be in the summer league, he was awful because the Heat supposedly, I would assume, wanted to see him hit threes. They wanted to see him do that. So he was shooting a lot of threes. They were setting up a lot of threes, and he's just putting up these horrible percentages and not utilizing him to the things that I was alluding to, what he can do closer to the basket offensively. And again, it's not like I'm a scout or anything. Like, I read Miami Heat writers saying that. So it's like I'm just accumulating from, all the free time I have to do that stuff. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, now it's like he's coming to a situation where he's gonna, he didn't get to do any summer league or anything like that, but there was no bumps in the road in this offseason. He got his offer to come to training camp and fight for a spot. He's rejoining Mike Brown, who coached him at the Olympics, and he has an opportunity to he has a runway here to take off if he's destined to do that. So, upside is huge with him, and he has an opportunity to fulfill it to some degree, at least. And I think he's a guy that is interesting to keep an eye on, especially out of all three. But I don't know if you want to add anything on Okpala.
No, not really. I think you said it well. I mean, he has the best upside. And I mean, it seems like he has the most NBA experience as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, to transition over, he was coached by Mike Brown during the Olympics, and just like another guy, Chima Moneke, who's again fighting for this spot, 15th roster spot. Can you give us a little more detailed breakdown of Moneke and what you see in him?
Yeah, Moneke is like we said, he's the wild card. He has never played in the NBA. He played at UC Davis for 2 years. Played overseas. He was cut, I think, in the second tier French league after 3 games in his rookie year. Signed with another team, moved up eventually to the top French league, and then to the Spanish league last year with a team called Baxi Manresa. And he seems like in European play, he's a pretty effective player. He's far more athletic than a lot of those guys. He is a huge spark of energy. He's able to hit threes. I think he's hitting threes in Europe like around 30 or 35%. I don't have the percentages in front of me right now, but that's decent. But it's like, how does that translate to the NBA? That doesn't usually directly translate, and it definitely doesn't usually translate with a huge improvement, or at least you shouldn't bet on that. But he's athletic. He does some things that are great. He's, like I said, he's an energy guy. He plays pretty good defense. He's pretty smart. But I think the thing that's really riding that he has to his advantage, I guess, is the fact that he could really become, and he said this himself, he really thinks he could become a fan favorite here, because he was at an event a few weeks ago, I think at the Golden One Center. I think it might have been like a charity event or something. And he was there, and people were asking for autographs and pictures, and they knew who he was and stuff like that. And that surprised him. And, he played at UC Davis. He's born to Nigerian parents out of Australia. But he went to UC Davis, and, so he's familiar with the area. He's kind of got that underdog mentality. I know that you've mentioned this a few times, Tone, where one of the things people like about Chimezie Metu is he's just constantly an underdog fighting for minutes, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit. People like that. They're rooting for that. And I think Moneke can really embrace that role and think about all the energy guys. Think about the Quincy Aces, the Reggie Evans. Think about how Rashawn Holmes got the love of, the whole Sacramento fan base. They were sparks of energy. They were exciting. They lit the fuse, and he can do that. And I think again for him, it's similar to Okpala. It kind of comes down to 3-point shooting. Can he be effective? Because you can't just go out. Like, it's not like he's only 6'6". He can play multiple positions, but it's not like he's super imposing, or it's not like he's going to shut down, guys like Okpala can. So it's like it's really dependent that he can hit threes, because you're not just going to, I mean, you might be able to, and maybe you could speak on this, but it's like, I don't know, like an energy guy could probably be very useful being used very limitedly. Like maybe like, I don't know, a few minutes a night sometime in the second quarter, maybe, or something like that. Maybe I'm kind of being a little too optimistic there, but I don't know how much he would have to play to be effective as an energy guy, but that would be his path, I think, to the roster and his biggest benefit, just being a fan favorite. I don't know if you could answer that question, though, because I can't really think of it.
I mean, like, I think Metu, if anything, last year, he was an energy guy. He would come in, especially when he was coming off the bench in those limited minutes he would get. I saw him as more of that energy guy because he would throw down the dunks,
Yeah,
and
the alley oops,
the
sneak
alley
around.
oop, exactly, and that not only does that hype up your team, but especially if it's a home game, it hypes up the crowd, and of course you always want the crowd into it, and that's helpful in its own, and just giving off some energy, it can be contagious, and I mean, I think that's the biggest upside of an energy guy. With Moneke compared to Okpala and Merrill, it's just like, what Okpala brings, it's going to be defense. You know what Merrill brings, it's going to be shooting. And so it's like, well, like and then Moneke, what he brings is energy and kind of,
He's
like
got some defense too, and
yeah,
some
got some
length and
defense.
athleticism.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's just a little harder for me personally to see him getting this last spot, just because I think at this point, at that 15th spot, you have to be great at something, or at least you stand out in an aspect. And Okpala, like I said, defense, and Merrill shooting. I think that's where Moneke lacks that it factor for him. And I mean, yeah, fan favorite, that's awesome, and him going to Davis is really cool. But I mean, I don't know. I
Right? Is it
mean,
enough?
exactly. Is that enough? I mean, it feels like that's his, to fans at least, like his biggest, like what he brings, I guess. And so I don't know. I don't know. I don't think.
Let's see if he can be the Cinderella story, huh?
Yeah,
I
I would
think it'd
love
be
to see
great.
it.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
would be great.
rooting for the guy. I'm rooting for all of them. And Moneke seems like a great guy, and he seems like a guy who actually wants to be here. And it's not like, oh, like Sacramento signed me. Let me fight for a spot. It's like, man, like I'm fighting for a spot in Sacramento. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome.
You
And
saw
so
you saw the post he put on Twitter after the announcement of his signing happened in July. He seemed like, I mean, this is something he's fighting for. You could just kind of feel it. You could feel the magnitude of how important and how much this means to him. Because he mentioned the fact that he got cut early on in France, and how much he's had to work at it. And like I said, like born to Nigerian parents in Australia, having to come try to compete in America, and then not having any offers or any opportunity to play in the NBA really, and just going overseas. Like he's taken the hardest possible route you could take to the NBA, and the fact that he's getting an invitation to camp, I mean, like, man, I mean that's impressive. So, but again, it's like in terms of like what you can offer production wise, he's definitely has the least convincing answer. But he could be a fun guy, and he's explosive. His dunk, like watching his dunks, I mean, like he's slamming them down. He's crazy. He's always doing funny faces in the camera. He could be a really interesting, almost marketing piece, maybe. But he'd
yeah,
really have to prove that he's doing other things. He probably has the biggest uphill battle, as he said. But in terms of like knowing what you're going to get, because Moneke is the guy that you know the least about. We know the least of what we're going to get out of him, what he's going to be able to show. The guy that is probably the most predictable is the guy that's 25 years old that did a missionary trip between high school and college. Is a 25 and a third year player in the NBA, which is pretty ripe for the NBA as a third year, and doesn't necessarily have a ceiling that's expanding in any way and it isn't super high, but what he offers is certainly a luxury in this league, and that's 3-point shooting. And Sam Merrill really does that. He shot 42% in college in 36 NBA games, 30 in his rookie year with Milwaukee, where he won a championship, and 6 in his second year with Memphis before he got waived. He's shooting 40%, and I think he was shooting like 43% in the first 30 games, like with Milwaukee. He was tearing it up from three. Like he's going into camp, just strictly talking about 3-point shooting. He's actually one of the best players there, and that's a big deal. And in terms of like a 15th spot, like we're talking about like the third spot having to take over for, one of the point guards for the third point guard spot, having to take over for Fox or Mitchell if they get hurt. Well, think about the fact that, well, like what if you have shooters in Herter, Monk, Davis, Barnes and Murray, I guess also you would say. Like if you needed that extra punch from 3-point land, if one or two of those guys is out for a period of time or for a game or something, you need that extra floor stretcher. I mean, Merrill's the perfect guy. I mean, he'd be the guy to do it. And this team has put such a focus on 3-point shooting that he would be perfect for that. But then at the same time, too, they also want to put such a focus on defense. And at 6'4", his wingspan's never been posted, but why post it if it's extremely average? Sounds like a euphemism for something. That's probably good. Just write that down, boys. He's kind of a liability on defense. But in terms of that 15th spot, what he'd be able to do filling in for a shooter, like he'd be great at that. And he's kind of a sure thing in that regard. You know what you're going to get. It's not super dynamic, but what he does is well. And to be fair to him, too, he's also pretty good ball handler, good passer, good understanding of the game. He can be a handler in the pick and roll or even do a pick and pop thing. His shooting is such a big, it's so good that he actually becomes a factor for defenders, where if he's running the pick and roll, he can step back if defenders are going to be stupid and let him shoot a three. He can draw a double team and hit the open roller, or he can even, he's not explosive or anything like that. He's not an exceptional ball handler, but like if the defense kind of, gives him a gap, he can get in there, and he's really good with his floater, and he's not like, again, explosive or exceptional around the rim, but he can do some things and surprise you. So he's not to be messed with. He knows his strengths and he plays to them on offense, and he can be very useful. You wouldn't just be getting a shooter, you wouldn't just be getting like like Mike Dunleavy or something like that. Like you'd be getting a guy that could really be dynamic on offense, but again, the defense is a question. But he's probably got the upper hand going into camp, I would say.
You think so? Over Okpala?
Just for that reason, just because like Okpala, there's still like he kind of needs to shoot. Like Merrill, it's like you're not expecting him to play defense. You're never going to expect him to play defense. So it's just like, like I said, what you're going to get from him. And I think that you might need to plug in shooting more than you need to plug in defense, because I think this team, it doesn't have like a bunch of exceptional defenders. You have guys that have they're defensively average with upside, like guys like Kevin Herter or even De'Aaron Fox. Like I would say that he has upside to be a really good defender. Like if Mike Brown can get the system going, it's not so much about having freak athletes coming in to play defense. It's about guys that can come in and play team defense. And when you think about the awareness and kind of fundamentally sound game that Merrill plays, again, he's not going to go out there and like, especially against guys on the perimeter, they're probably going to blow by him a lot of the time. He's still going to be like an effective and do the best he can. He plays hard in terms of team defense. So I just think that for that reason, like he's got the edge going in. Okpala could easily take it from him. but he's got to show it first. You know what I mean?
No, I mean I totally get you. Shooting's at a premium in the NBA, and he's proven that he can, be an effective shooter. So, um, no, I totally get it. I can see why he could easily be the leader for this 15th and final roster spot. So, um, I mean, with Fox and Sabonis on this team, like, yeah, you need defense, and Okpala provides that. But no, I agree. I mean, you need guys to hit shots on the perimeter if Davis or Herter or Monk go down, and you need to bring in a guy who can, you know, hit at some wide open looks. Merrill's that guy out of the three. So, and something else you mentioned, and I didn't realize or I didn't put it together, was that Sam Merrill won the championship on the Bucks. And so it's like going back onto the Kings culture, and they're trying to, establish this winning culture. I mean, you got Merrill, these guys fighting for these five guys fighting for the last two roster spots. You got Merrill, who, you said won a championship with the Bucks. You got Okpala, who went to the NBA Finals and, with the Heat, but lost to the Lakers. You got Cook and Dellavedova, who are NBA. Did Dellavedova won an NBA championship, right? With the
Yeah,
Cleveland.
he won it the second year, and I think
The
Cook
second
won
year.
it with. Didn't Cook win in 2020 with the Lakers too?
Yeah, he won with 2020 the Lakers, and
And
I think he
then
won one with the
28,
Warriors.
yeah, 2018 with the Warriors.
Yeah, and so it's like, yeah, these guys aren't going to be like the leaders of this team or anything, but at least they know what like a winning culture looks like and can definitely add value in that.
And it's a young team, and some of those guys, especially Cook and Dellavedova, and I mean, like, I don't know, the other three guys, I guess, are not young. I mean, they're not old or experienced,
Yeah.
but especially Cook and Dellavedova. I mean, like think about like the veteran presence on this team. Like you have Harrison Barnes, you have maybe Alex Len, but it's not like Alex Len is like an overt leader. He's kind of just a kind of a rock as that third center. But you kind of need that other bookend to Harrison Barnes in a way. And Harrison Barnes can only do so much. He's almost a better leader by example in just the way he takes care of himself. I don't know if he necessarily is a super vocal guy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like I think both Dellavedova and Quinn Cook could be very beneficial for that locker room. Now, I guess that's just kind of adding on to when we were talking about them, but it's a young team, and so that stuff is important. Because what's talent if you don't have that culture that you're talking about?
Yeah. Very true. If you don't mind me, I mean, do you have more to say on Merrill?
No.
I've just, we talked about these five guys so much, and those are for the last two spots, and so you can only, I mean, there's 15 spots, but you can only have 13 active, and just for simplicity's sake, let's say, like, let's just agree one of these guys gets the job. Like Merrill, we'll say Merrill gets that 15 spot, and we'll say, I mean, it might change between, if depending on who we choose for these last spots, but like, who do you think's suiting up? You can have 13 guys suit up each night and two inactives, and so who are the 13 guys each night?
Well, you can definitely say that whoever that 15th spot is one of the inactive guys. The other inactive, because like think about, you're not going to make any of your guards inactive. I mean, aside from maybe the third point guard, which we'll all address in a second. But Fox, Mitchell, Herter, Monk, and Davis are not going to be inactive. Barnes and Bazemore, you need Bazemore, regardless if he's not going to be playing to the top potential, even though a bounce back year is probably more likely.
Murray, Lyles,
Keegan Murray, Trey Lyles, and then you probably carry two, maybe three centers.
I think you carry three. I think you carry Sabonis.
They always carried.
Sabonis.
You're always carrying. They were carrying Len with the other two.
Yeah.
Late last year. So I would expect that to kind of be the same. So what is that? You're basically leaving.
That's 12.
You're either going to make the third point guard inactive, or you're going to make Chimezie Metu inactive. And I would almost be tempted to say that Chimezie Metu, probably like it depends how much they feel comfortable with maybe other guards or other people facilitating, but I don't know if they feel comfortable with that. So they might want to be carrying that third point guard as an insurance policy. Because those last two guys, anyways, even if they are active, the last 2, 3, maybe even 4 guys that are active, sometimes they're not even in the nightly rotation or even in the plan for the night, So it's like they probably would want to do that. I think Chimezie Metu realistically is kind of, again, like he's always, it seems like he was like this last year. He's just on the outside looking in, and he's always relevant because he's interesting, and he brings a lot of things to the table, and he seems like such an intriguing, like, I don't want to call him like a prospect, but young player. He's an intriguing young player, and like we always say, and like we said about some of these other guys, if he can just like really be like a consistent shooter, like, man, like that'd be amazing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think for that reason that he's not, I mean, that really limits him. I think he's just kind of the third power forward, and I don't know if you really carry the third power forward into an active as an active player on a nightly basis. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's definitely between Metu and Dellavedova and Cook, like you said. I don't know. It's kind of. I mean, I doubt either of them will play that much, and so I don't know if it'll matter too much. I could
Right.
I could see Metu playing more if he was on the roster compared to Dellavedova and Cook.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like maybe you want the insurance at that backup point guard spot, and you decide to take that third point guard instead. I think to start off, I think Metu's that 13th spot just because. I mean, I don't know. I quit. It's not like Cook and Dellavedova aren't experienced players. They've been in the NBA.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. It'd be weird to just cut out Metu like this after being on the Kings for the last 2-3 years. And
I was going to mention that, and I think you're kind of getting there. Like, it would be, I feel like you're talking about the fact that those guys are older, they've been around. They're going to be able to adjust if they're not suiting up every night, It might be better for like Metu's, I don't know the guy, but like it might be better for his confidence, if
yeah,
he's suiting up. And I would imagine that it's not going to be the same. It might change night to night, who's active. But if they think in a particular matchup that they maybe would like to have a little extra size or something like that, they definitely might want Metu more often than not. But that's an interesting point because, and I don't know if you were going to say that, but I just thought about that. It's just like, yeah, maybe it has something to do with like the confidence of a fairly young player that has not found his footing in this league. I mean, he's had moments where he has, even down the stretch last year when he got opportunities after the Sabonis injury. He looked pretty good at times. He had some of those, Mezzi Mamba moments, where he just go off. But it's like, how often and how frequent can he tap into that?
yeah. I don't know. I'm not honestly. I'm not the biggest Metu guy. I think he gets a lot of hype for some reason. I've never understood it. I don't know. He jacks up way too many threes for me and misses the majority of them, and it just kind of pisses me off.
Yeah, he's
Um,
got that. He has the Mamba mentality, but it's like only sometimes is he following through.
exactly, and
Only sometimes does he deserve the Mezzi Mamba.
yeah, and I don't want that guy on the floor if he's just gonna if he thinks he can shoot but he really can't, but he doesn't stop shooting. It's just to me it's a liability at that point, and I don't know. I don't know. I think it's just
It could be interesting because we are talking about a situation where even if he is active, playing time is going to be sparse no matter what.
yeah,
So
but
in that
mhm.
kind of killer mentality, whether it's phony or legitimate or somewhere in between, like that could be like what happens if you're having a terrible offensive night, and you just like, I don't know, like maybe you're looking for just a solution just quickly with like a second unit in, and you're not getting production from some scorers off the bench or something like that, and you're just like, I'm just going to put in Metu. Like, doesn't Metu seem like the type of guy where he just like, oh my God, did you see Metu in his first game of the season, 3 weeks in? He scored 20 off the bench. Like, he's the type of freaking son of a bitch to do that. I mean,
He
not saying
is.
that he's going to do that, but, something to that effect. It's just, I don't know. He's such a kind of, he could be lightning in a bottle, and sometimes he can just be an empty bottle.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. And like I said, like last year, he was that guy that was throwing down the oops. He was throwing down the dunks, getting the crowd into it, getting the team a little energized. And, it's something you can't overlook. I think it's an important job to have. I think you need at least one of those guys on your team. Um, and he's the guy at this moment who provides that. And, hey, I mean, he is lightning in a bottle. If his shots working, I mean, we saw that game against who was it, the Magic, or was it the Magic where he just like had a great game
I
for
think
like
it
20?
was the Magic.
Yeah, and he had like a
It
good
was either the
game.
Magic or the Pacers game. It was one of
Yeah,
the two.
yeah, I think so too. I was thinking the Pacers as well. But anyways, like he had a great first half. I think he scored like 20 points in the first half or something, or pretty close to that. And I mean, if that shot's falling, he's definitely shown that he has some skill. He's not just. I mean, I don't like calling him a 3-point shooter because I don't think he's good enough. But he like takes enough attempts where it's like, all right, what are you doing? But I mean, around the
Shooter's
rim,
mentality.
exactly, is that shooter's mentality, and they can fall sometimes. But he's also decent around the post, around the basket. He always surprises me with his post moves. I'm like, okay, like you don't seem like a guy who has that in your bag, but he has some good post, moves in the post, and he can run well with a team, especially a young team. He can rebound decently. His defense is whatever, nothing special, but he definitely has his qualities, and I think I like that lightning in a bottle. Like he definitely has that X factor to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was against the Pacers. He had 22 points.
Pacers, okay.
Yeah, and he. I think one of the things too that's interesting about Metu, I think someone pointed this out on something. I don't know, something to do with Cap City Crown. That he had like the highest defensive win share, which is kind of weird because he's like I'm not gonna call him a bad defender, but he's not like. I never look at him and go like, wow, that guy's like shutting people down. But he has moments where he shows like good hands. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like he'll come up with a steal or something like that. Like he has these moments defensively, and it's just like it seems like every aspect of his game is just that lightning in a bottle kind of energy, I guess, or kind of characteristic. And it's just I don't know. It's interesting, but you'd like to see him just put it all together, maybe. And I don't know. I don't even know if he's cut for that. Because if we're talking about a situation where we're keeping him on the roster just to keep his confidence up, or keeping him active, I guess, suiting up every night to keep his confidence up. It's like, do you think his confidence is going to be up if he's not getting play time? And then when he does, because he's rusty and he's not doing well, and then all of a sudden he's on the bubble of getting just completely just dumped? I mean, like, would you be surprised if Chimezie Metu's not on this team in February?
No.
Yeah, neither
Not
would
at
I.
all. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, I don't know. I think you mentioned it well. Like people like Metu. And so sometimes when you're looking through those rose-colored glasses, you're kind of like, yeah, like Chimezie, like legit. Like sometimes I'm counting like the legitimate NBA players on here, and like sometimes I have to go like 11 or 12 or like 10 or 11, and I'm always like, no, Metu's not. Come on, be honest. Like no, he's not. But for some reason, there's something that's captivating about him. I don't know. It's got a charm to him. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that smile.
I know. I mean, not to out you in front of everyone, but I know you're a newer. I don't even know if you're a Warriors fan growing up, and so
A basketball fan.
a basketball fan, Celtics, Warriors, whatever.
But yeah, I've just recently been getting into the Kings, but yeah, like recently, as in like a while. Like not like last week. Like I don't want to make it seem like
no, and you're very knowledgeable on sports, and John's a great guy. I can vouch that as a lifelong Kings fan. But the Kings fans seem to always like I think before Metu, it was Harry Giles, and Harry Giles had a lot of I guess potential coming out of college. I think he couldn't play his first year. He had like a really bad injury. He was like the number one prospect out of high school. Went to Duke, got injured, couldn't play his rookie year. It's like, all right, this guy. They compared him to Chris Webber, right? Because
Mhm.
probably because he's on the Kings, and he was a big guy who could pass pretty well. And I think Kings fans hear that, and it's like Chris Webber comparing it to the best Sacramento King of all time. And then he loved the city, and it's something that doesn't happen in Sacramento a lot. And when someone loves a city, it's like you love them just as much back. And but it's like after like the first couple of years, it's like, all right, Harry Giles, he's really not that. He's like decent, but I mean, Harry Giles isn't in the league for a reason right
Right.
now.
And if I'm not mistaken, Tone, like what didn't they not like pick up his option or something by a deadline, so he just became an unrestricted free agent, and that was kind of a big story in the Kings
Yeah.
fan base, and people were
Hmm.
like, "Oh, why are you just letting him walk? Like, what the hell?" And it's just like you said, it's like, is he even in the league? He might not. He's probably not. Is what you're saying.
No,
Um,
he's not.
and he's not, and it's just like, man, case in point. Um, so I see what you're saying. Get high
Yeah,
on guys for no reason, which is easy to do.
exactly. It's easy to do, especially when these people bring. Everyone loves energy, guys. That's just a fact. But especially when they love the city, and I don't know. I really don't understand the reason for Metu personally. I don't think he's that energetic, but I guess I just have like a grudge against this guy. But Metu's the guy right now who gets unconditional love for a reason, and you know once he's gone, someone will jump in and take his place. Who's
Yeah, and honestly speaking, if we're talking about Okpala shooting threes, he's not just taking the 15th spot on the roster. He's probably taking Chimezie Metu's job. I mean, he's taken that place when you think about it, because all of a sudden now he's a more viable player to play than even him, which is something that we totally neglected to mention. But it's nice
That's
that we're
true.
talking about it in this chronological order, because at the end of the day, I mean, Chimezie Metu might have he's kind of in the same group. I mean, like, he has more NBA experience and more experience with this team. So he has an edge there, but it's like he's not far off from these other guys we're talking about being, on the edge or at the bottom of the roster consideration, you know? So
Hmm.
that should just be kept in mind, probably, especially if people are so like so happy about a guy or like high on a guy. But I don't know. There's a lot
No,
of other guys to get high on this team, I think.
I think you bring up a good point. I mean, just their names, Chima Moneke and Chimezie Metu, they sound very similar, but they seem like very similar players. Um, themselves. They're just those energetic guys, a little small for the small power forward position, little undersized, but make up for it in other areas. They can stretch the floor a little. They can maybe outrun bigger guys, and that's a good point. If Moneki somehow does get this job, I think he just starts battling for that third point guard, or sorry, third power forward position against Metu. They're
Yeah.
pretty
And
similar.
it's really Okpala, though. I mean, Okpala is the guy. It's like, man, if he can put together the shooting, well, not only is he better than Merrill and Moneke, he's better than Metu. He's better than he might even be. I'm not saying I think he like Lyles would really have to suck from 3-point land, and Okpala would have to be really good from 3-point land for any kind of swap in minutes there. And I don't want to get super optimistic about Okpala or make it seem like any of this is going to happen, but it's like, if he can't hit that upside and he can shoot threes, it's not just that 15th spot. It's not even just Metu. It's like, guys like Lyles and Kent Bazemore. I mean, they might be challenged for minutes by him. I guess like that's just something I neglected to even think about. But
No, you make a good
that's a
point.
that's a that's a great thing to have and think about going into camp.
Yeah, no, it truly is. It really is. I mean, you want all the competition you can get that will only bring out the best in everyone. You can bring out the best in a guy like Kent Bazemore who's looking to have that comeback season after having a terrible season in LA, and that can really push Bazemore to get back to his normal self or how he was maybe 2-3 years ago. And
Yeah.
you bring in these guys and that's true. It's not just those five guys competing. It pushes those guys towards the second stringers. It'll push them to get better too. and
Mm-hmm.
give them a little something to like. All right, like if I start slacking, Okpala's right behind me, and he's ready. He's hungry to get that opportunity.
Hell yeah.
So, hmm
Yeah.
that's a good
Heat
point.
up the competition because heat rises. It's only going to get better.
Exactly, exactly.
But I
It's
mean,
exciting. It'll be fun. It's awesome training camp. It's gonna happen.
yeah, and I think two more kind of things to focus on, maybe. Um, and I'll just hit one at a time here. It's just, I think the interesting thing, and I think it's not like people are, the two guard situation as we see it now, it seems like Herter will be the starter just because he has the best two-way situation right now. Um, Monk seems like he'll be the kind of scorer off the bench, and then Davis will be, with the lack of substantial depth on the wing, Davis and also just the mix of shooting guards will find ways to get in on the perimeter. Like guys will have minutes, but at one point, and the very well could be that Herters just starts all 82 games, and barring injury, and is great for this team as the starting, and maybe they have the formula all figured out. But I almost want to go out. Now I don't want to like say this is going to happen, but I just don't like kind of in a similar way where it's like, well, Metu might be on the edge. I think something that should be like mentioned is it's like I really wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season. And again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season, Terrence Davis is the starting shooting guard on this team. I think a lot of things would have to happen, i.e., he would have to be shooting around 40%. He's already a good three-point shooter, but he's below the expertise, if you will, of Herter and Monk, who are both about 40% shooters, 39 and 40. And, the only reason I say this is that if he's able to do that, if he's able to really kind of like flourish, and he's also going into a contract year, keep in mind, if he can really go into, I think he's going into a contract year, I think he is, if he can generate confidence and get a flow going and play well and, really show that he's right up there offensively with these other two guys, I think he has a chance to really be the best, option. I mean, again, Herter, that's kind of, you got to take that from Herter at this point. You got a lot to prove, but we've mentioned this in the past. One of the things that gets overlooked about Terrence Davis, aside from Terrence Davis himself, is the fact that he has a 6'9" wingspan. He's only 6'5", I think, but he has a 6'9" wingspan. Advanced statistics have shown that he guards small forwards just as much as he guards shooting guards. You can use him in a lot of different ways. He can be an effective defender. He can be versatile. I just think, I guess I would bet on the fact that Terrence Davis is going to be a big part of this team. And I guess I would say that, if he can figure out the offense and really become a shooter that is in the same league as Herter and Monk, which he's not right now. To be fair, he's in a high league, but it's not that league. Then at that point, if he's a better 3-point shooter, or at least on par with them, then he's the better two-way player, in my opinion, and generates probably the best, production as a starter. But I don't know. I was just throwing it out there, But I don't know if you want to comment on that two-guard situation because it's interesting. Again, it's not so much a battle because it's just like they're all going to get used, and they're all really good. But it's just, you can kind of go any number of ways thinking about it,
Yeah, Davis, I think he'll be that third shooting guard and he'll remain that third shooting guard. He has a lot of potential. I like Davis. But like you said, he's not a bad 3-point shooter, but he's not at Monk and Herter's level. And I don't know, consistency really. It was his third year last year, missed most of the season. And he was doing well going into that injury, but I need to see a little bigger sample size. Um, I don't know. Herter and Monk are very proven NBA players at this point,
Mm-hmm. They
and
were big acquisitions for a reason.
exactly. And Davis will have to do a lot to overshadow him. But that doesn't mean they won't play together. If Bazemore he's your backup small forward, had a very bad year on the Los Angeles last season. Herter can play the small forward. Davis, like you said, can guard the small forward. Um, maybe you'll see, a mixture of Herter and Davis on the floor together at the 3 and the 2, or Davis at the 3 with Monk at the 2, or something like that. So I can definitely see these shooting guards sharing the floor together, just because it seems like a couple of them can play the 2 and the 3. And if Barnes doesn't have that backup, and Bazemore is just showing that he isn't progressing and that he's just the guy from LA last year, then I think we'll see a lot of Herter and Monk at the 3. And I think Davis, being that third shooting guard and being third on the depth chart at that position, he has stuff to prove. And if there's an open spot at that small forward position and he can guard the 3 effectively, then, like, I bet he'll want a shot, he'll want a shot at it. So,
right. Yeah. It's that competition thing. It's just like, this is good. This is good. This is really good to have such dense talent at kind of one position. So I don't know. Again, like, you're totally right. Like, for Davis to do that, to do anything that I said, a lot of things would have to go right for him. He'd have to be playing on an insane level. But I just think that, again, I'm not putting money on anything, but it's just like, I would not be like, wow, that's crazy. Like, would have never thought that. I would have been like, hey, like, best case scenario happened. And it was a very, like, I guess that's all you have to say about that. Because, again, it is a lot of things. You're basically trying to overrun 2 of the biggest acquisitions over the offseason. Point taken.
But I mean, you can't count Davis out. You can't count him out.
We're saying, he's in the mix for sure.
He's in the mix. He has a lot of potential. If he was playing at that level that he was before the season-ending injury last season, then he's gonna really give Monk and Herter a run for their money for some minutes, really. So, or even Kent Bazemore at that point. So,
definitely,
yeah.
Speaking of guys that are giving people a run for their minutes, the other thing I want to talk about is the center situation. I mean, Sabonis is the starter. Obviously, you will have Rashawn Holmes. He's going to be number 2, at least going into things. Everything should be good there. He's a valuable player. He's still one of the better players on this team when you think about it, and he'll be a boost defensively. And then also Alex Len. But one of the things that's really interesting about Alex Len, and we kind of mentioned this even before he started playing internationally this summer, over the last month or so. But it's like, man, if Len, or even we were saying it, like, if Len or Holmes, if one of them could shoot threes, that's a real, like, that makes such a big difference in terms of, like, what this team could be able to do in terms of a backup center. And I don't remember how many performances it was, but this summer, Alex Len shot extremely well. And at Eurobasket in particular, he shot, I think, 37 or 38%. Let me get up the stats. But point being, he was effective from 3 in Eurobasket again. I mean, I don't know how things translate, but it's just like, that's a physical game. Like, a 3's a 3. Like, he's probably been working on it all summer, and he's going right into camp with this. I'm not saying he's going to come in, and because he had that 1 year in Atlanta where he shot, I think, 38% from 3. I'm not saying he's going to come in and do that. But he's an interesting guy. And again, this is more of a conversation of, like, heating up the competition. If he can hit threes, he makes the competition better. He makes things interesting. He makes things tough and doling out minutes. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get them, but it's a huge deal that Alex Len shot extremely well. I got the stats here finally. He shot 46.2% in the 5 group stage games in the 1 elimination round game he played in Eurobasket. He also played a few World Cup qualifiers, but I don't have all the stats in front of me right now. But in those 6 games, he went 6 of 13. Again, that's not a huge sample size, but you're rolling into camp. It's an interesting thing. I mean, Alex Len, I don't know. He's an interesting guy.
Yeah, I like Lynn. Like I said, I think Lynn will make this roster. You carry three centers just because the dude's an NBA level player. Um, It'd just be dumb not to have him on the roster. He can provide valuable minutes. Not like extremely like exceptional player, but he can play that center position well enough where you're okay leaving him in if you need to. And yeah, and just like Len, he's always been like that sneaky 3-point shooter. I think since he's been on. Well, he was on the Kings last year. Um, was he on the Kings 2 years ago? I think it was just last year, right? And then he was on the Kings
Yeah.
like 2 seasons before that, so it was like his second stint. But
Hmm.
I mean, he only shot. I think I was looking at the stats a second ago. 28% from three last year. But I don't know. I feel like he shot a lot higher personally. But if you look at his that season in Atlanta, I think it said 18-19 before he came to Sacramento. He
Hmm.
was shooting a career high in attempts on threes at 2.4, and he's shooting 36% from three.
Yeah, 36%.
And like every other year, he's like averaging maybe like 1 3 a game, a little less, a
Yeah, it's
little more.
crazy. Looking at the totals, it's insane. I mean, not like it's a career high 204 attempts, but it's like never once has he shot more than. I mean, the second highest is 59 the next year, and it was not going well for him. He shot 27% that season.
Yeah, but it's
And when
weird
he
because
when he came to Sac and he was doing well in that little second half of the year, he only shot three. He hit two of them, but he only shot three in 15 games.
yeah, it's kind of odd, right? But it's like okay, maybe if if like you tell him to shoot threes, he's gonna get a little more comfortable with it, and maybe shoot the three ball a little better. I don't know. It was like the more threes he shoots, the better he is. The less he shoots, the worse he is. So maybe you can experiment with Lynn a little. Maybe you throw him in that corner um, on some plays and try to run some threes for him and get his confidence up. Because if you have a big guy who can shoot a three, I mean that's huge. And Lynn's a bruiser and he's that Ukrainian Eurobasket guy, and he's gonna put in work down low and be physical. I mean that's great and all, and he can still do that. But I mean I think even more valuable is if he's 7 feet and can hit that three. And so I mean why not? He has at least that one season where he's proven that he can do that at a pretty decent clip for a center. So
Mhm.
I think you experiment with it a little. It
Yeah,
won't hurt
you're gonna
anything.
you're gonna
Yeah.
find out pretty quickly what you're gonna get out of it. You know, um, he's like Alex Lynn is like the thing that he does consistently is he's either like a factor from the beginning of the season, like I think one of his 5 years in Phoenix he was a factor. The rest of the year he was like a limited role player, real disappointment for them. But he like he, like you kind of know what you're gonna get off the bat. I guess what I'm saying, and it probably comes a lot from that 3-point shot because it's like I don't know if he's doesn't seem like the type of guy, and this might be kind of more of a guess than anything, but it's just like, it doesn't seem like the type of guy. Like he kind of feels like the guy that's like not brimming with confidence as a NBA player. So if he's not hitting the three, he's probably not going to think about hitting it. Like I think he knows after a certain point if it's not going to drop.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like in terms of seeing what happens in camp, it's like that's a big indication of what we're going to get out of him. I guess that's kind of like a rocky way of saying that, but it'd be interesting. And I think, like you're saying, I mean, like he's a trustworthy, kind of solid, like if you need him kind of guy. Just been in the league for a long time. Anything else you get from him, that's money. That is,
Mm-hmm.
that's
That's the
great.
bonus. Yeah.
And if it can be 3-point shooting, that'd be great. But Rashawn Holmes, I think Rashawn Holmes is such a talented player. It's hard to say he's not the second center on this, you know, all the way through. Um, it'd be interesting to see. One of the things, and I've never like vouched. I know we put this article out there. People are like, no, you can't start Sabonis and Holmes together. And it's like, no, nobody said that. But there might be moments where you could benefit, depending on matchups, if you need a little more size or something like that. It could benefit to playing them together, uh, at the same time, just because the difference between Indiana, because a lot of people point to the Miles Turner Sabonis thing that didn't work, and it's like, yeah, but this is a little different because Miles Turner is a rim protector. He's a big guy. As such, he's the center. Sabonis was guarding fours a lot of the time. If you have Holmes and Sabonis together, it flips because Sabonis is the far less athletic defender compared to Holmes. Holmes is going to be guarding more modern power forwards if he's forced to do that. And again, it would be a matchup thing, I would imagine. I don't know if you had maybe bigger opponents or a bigger front court that you're going against. So I don't even know how often it would get used, but it's a viable option defensively. And if Len, likewise, if Len is hitting threes, then playing two centers effectively together in that case, though I don't think that would be as frequently used. I think Len, if he's hitting threes, would be more of a backup to Sabonis filling in for offensive maybe purposes. But even if they were playing together, that could give them an offensive edge. So it's interesting. I mean, just kind of interesting to think about. But, seems like it's like we said, it's just like whatever you get out of Len is just going to be icing on the cake. And you play to matchups, I think, in a lot of these situations with bigs. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on Rashawn Holmes and that whole situation or what the outlook is on the center situation.
I mean, Holmes is the second center. He's the second, string center. But I think him and Sabonis are going to have to learn how to share the floor together. I don't know. It just seems like, Holmes was a big part of this team. And if you can somehow find a way to get him back into, a decent role next to Sabonis, no, all the better. I'm not saying it's going to happen all the time, but like you said, like Holmes can play that 4 pretty well, and Sabonis can play that 5, and so it'd be an interesting look. But
yeah, and just to be clear about Sabonis, it's not that I've always said this. Sabonis is not. He's only a defensive liability if he's guarding fours. As a 5, he's just like average, maybe a tiny bit below average, but he's average. He plays pretty well. He's not like a physically gifted defender, and he's not like exceptional, and he's not like super burly, but he does enough. He defends the paint, just kind of staying in front of guys rather than being a rim protector or like being a hands guy or a physical guy. He just kind of plays in the right positioning. He's a decent defender. So like, he's not a bad defender as a center. He's only a bad defender when you need to play him against fours. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That was the big mistake. And I just,
and that's why that didn't work. Mm-hmm. In India,
I don't know.
Sorry,
it'll be interesting. I'm just, but like you said, it's like you really do have to get like it'll be important to have your two, like not just your two best centers, but like we said, like 2 of your best players are Sabonis and Holmes, and there's going to be moments where it would be very, very beneficial if they can find a way to be effective. And again, it doesn't have to be a nightly dose of that. It's not going to be the starting lineup, but team game and matchups happen, and there'll be certain things that Mike Brown will want up his sleeve, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's a game of matchups, and Mike Brown's a smart guy. He's gonna, I think we'll see some interesting things.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think it's kind of some of the things to focus on as we head into camp there. A lot of actually interesting kind of narratives to keep an eye on in terms of the roster dynamics.
Yeah, There's a lot going into this camp, and like we said, it's gonna be an exciting camp. A lot to learn, a lot to figure out. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a few surprises along the way too.
Yeah, but I don't know. It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to hear what fans think as well about any of these guys or any other ones that we maybe skipped over. But if basketball season's back.
It's back, baby. I'm excited for it. Training camp starts next week, and the season follows shortly after. So, you got anything else to add, John?
I think that's it for now. We'll be back next week, though.
That's it for now. like you said, we'll be back next week. So, be reporting. Well, I guess it'll be like the first day of camp, but we'll have something to talk about. Um,
Plenty.
exactly. So, well, thank you all for tuning in and listening. And until next time, have a good one.